Okay, hello everybody. Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Great. My name is Yael. I can see we're familiar faces here and some new faces as well. So welcome to all of you this morning. I work on the employment team here at Work Avenue. For those of you who don't know me, I'm going to be sort of on this session today, sort of in the wings, looking after the chat and the slides and the session. But the session will be given today by Amanda Reuben. Amanda, where are you? Can't quite see you. Ooh. Oh, have we not yet got Amanda on the session today? We could have hit our first hurdle. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is, I think I can see Emma is here on the session. My colleague Emma, I'm wondering.
I am. Good morning.
I'm wondering if you could give me a little bit of help here, where sure. I just do intros to try and see if Amanda has got stuck somewhere. She doesn't seem to be on the session.
Oh.
Or if you are here, Amanda, I don't think you are, to unmute yourself.
I can't see her either. Why don't I just phone her?
Okay, great. Sorry, everybody. This is the challenges of a Zoom technical conference, but she definitely will be here because we have spoken this morning. Just to sort of, while we're finding Amanda, to let you know sort of who I am. I look after the job placement side of things here at Work Avenue, which means that I manage our job placement service and I speak to all the employers who recruit for vacancies in their organizations, companies, businesses, charities, through Work Avenue. Obviously, we have, it is a busy service. We have had quite a lot of success. Obviously, the last few months have been quite different in the way that things have gone. And as part of my role, I do work with a number of different recruiters as well as employers directly, Amanda being one of them. So she is going to hopefully be here soon to tell you a little bit about working with recruiters, working with recruitment agencies. We know that people have quite different type of experiences working with recruitment agencies, some more positive, some more negative experiences. So she is hopefully going to be able to help you navigate your way through dealing with recruiters going forward today. We're hoping she's going to be I see her. I see her there. Okay, Amanda has joined us. Hi, Amanda. Can you hear me?
How are you? I ran away.
No problem.
I didn't run away.
No, thank you very much. I've just done a little intro about who I am, about who you are in your absence, but obviously I will let you say it a lot more eloquently. So I'm really delighted that Amanda has agreed to allow me to rope her into giving this morning's session. She has a lot of experience as a recruiter, working with different clients, different employers, and I'm sure we can all benefit from what she's going to tell us this morning. If you have any questions as we go along, please put them into the chat. I'm going to monitor the chat and we will try and answer the questions as we go along where there is sort of a suitable break. Okay, Amanda, over to you. Start the slides.
Right, are we on?
We are on. Hopefully everybody can see the slides. 1 second. Okay.
Hi, morning everyone. Sorry about that. I'm really sorry, complete misunderstanding and totally my fault. Thank you to Work Avenue for inviting me to speak today. And thanks in advance to Yael, who's my wing woman in this session, who's obviously introduced herself. And at the risk of sounding like one of the government scientific advisors, I'm going to be saying next slide, please, although not right now at this minute, because I can see we're already on the next slide. So morning everyone, as I said, and as you know, my specialist subject is recruitment. and I'm going to take you through my recommendations on how I think working with recruiters and agencies is beneficial and how you can benefit from it. And as Emma said in her introduction, I'm going to hopefully dispel a few myths, as well as share a few other hints and tips along the way. So it is tough out there. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but hopefully you'll leave this session with a few ideas on how to increase your chances of success with recruiters as part of your job search. And I know that Work Avenue very much support the idea that we are just one arrow in your armory in terms of your job search. We've got around 50 minutes, although less now because I was being a complete technical numpty. And whilst I've got a lot to say, I'd imagine you've probably got lots to say too. So I would hope that we can, where possible, make this fairly interactive and obviously be done in time for 11 o'clock and Big Ben and the 2-minute silence. So I think, yeah, I probably would have said, type your questions in the chat and she'll let me know. And I'm happy to be interrupted really rather than wait till the end of the session. Anyway, before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about me, because some of you may have done a bit of online stalking and looked at my LinkedIn profile or my website. What you will have seen is that around 6.5 years ago, I set up Bijou Recruitment. I had worked in the recruitment sector for a couple of other businesses for a number of years. And after one really bad experience with a London agency, I decided enough was enough and I set up by myself. Some would say it was brave, some would say it was stupid. But with a variety of established and loyal clients in my portfolio, I simply thought I could service their needs more adequately by myself. And whilst I've worked hard, I've also been lucky, and I do work with some really great businesses. When I first set up, I was working mainly with the fashion and retail sector, but this really has evolved over the years, and I've got clients in professional services and charity sectors, for example. I don't really specialize in a particular job function, although I do steer clear of IT and manufacturing, for example, and I leave that to the experts. But what I do specialize in is hiring for culture. And what this means is that I work very closely with both my clients and my candidates to ensure that you are the right person for the job as well as the company, that your ethos and your values match those of the organization. It may be that your skills and experience match the job description, but is it the right company for you? Are you right for them? So today I'm speaking to you from truthfully, a not very sunny Bournemouth. We moved here in August of 2019, and I do firmly believe that really location is no barrier to hiring for my clients wherever they are based. And that in a nutshell is me. So, what is a recruitment agency and what is the difference between a recruiter and a headhunter? Well, a recruitment agency will normally be instructed by a business to find a new member of staff. Okay, so far so good, and you probably all know that. But what you might not know is that some businesses instruct a number of agencies, often to fill the same role. In fact, one accountancy firm I've worked with gave the job out to 8 different agencies. Typically, the agency will advertise the role on a jobs board, maybe something like Total Jobs or Reed, and they will be reactive to the responses. So they may use their existing database to find a candidate, but quite honestly, if they're competing with other agencies, speed is of the essence, and they just may simply throw a handful of CVs at the client until 1 or possibly 2 stick. So what this means is that in your job search, your CV may be one of these that gets farmed to a client with, or more often than not, without you knowing and without a qualifying meeting or conversation. A recruitment agency will normally get paid by the hiring business when the candidate is successfully placed. And sometimes the payment may be split between the start date and probation being passed. Now, how is a headhunter any different? Well, for the most part, a headhunter is appointed exclusively by the business and to scout the market. So they will directly approach a number of suitable candidates rather than advertise the role. And perhaps these candidates might be working for a business competitor. So a headhunter, you could say, does a far more qualified search and selection. And a headhunter is often paid in tranches and will receive part payment regardless of a successful hire. So equally, they work more closely with you as a candidate and will often have a far greater knowledge of the role itself and of the company they're hiring for. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Amanda. Just before we move on, there has been one question. I don't know if you feel to answer now or maybe later. It's quite specific.
Yeah.
Michael's asked if you can point him in the right direction for recruitment agencies for customer service, for including helplines for governments, councils or charities. I don't know if this is something that you have a list of what you would recommend, if you want to answer now or maybe afterwards.
Can we leave that one to the end, please, Yael?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Sorry.
Don't worry.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop the share a second. Sorry, everyone, we will go back. This is the session of technical problems, everyone. Sorry. Okay.
Right, thank you. So now we know the difference between a recruiter and a headhunter. How do you decide the right agency for you? And this, whilst I can't specifically list a customer service based agency, this section may answer, was it Michael's question? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So I'd love to say there's a science to it, but unfortunately there isn't. It really does depend on your personal choice. It's kind of trial and error. And I'm sure if I asked for a show of hands to the question, who has had a bad recruiter experience, there would be more hands than I can count. And I'm just thinking, luckily, I can't see everybody because I'm not sure I would be able to count all the hands. So this maybe answers Michael's question. There are specialized and non-specialized agencies. And the thing to do is to identify who's working with the caliber of business or maybe a brand that you're interested in. So who's promoting your level of role? Who do your friends or your colleagues recommend? Now, if you don't mind your details being farmed in the way that I described earlier, you'd probably be comfortable with one of the larger agencies, the big names we're all familiar with, Hayes or Michael Page, for example. But if getting a personal service and wanting your recruiter to really work for you and with you, then choose a smaller one. Now, if you do elect one of the larger ones, let's say Michael Page, because they're so well known, you may not know this, but it wouldn't be unusual for your details to be shared amongst their consultants. So as you can imagine, their eye on the prize is their percentage of the fee from placing you. And they may well be fighting over your details if they're working with different client businesses. And my advice here really is to be firm and say you just want one consultant to represent you. What they do internally is really none of your concern, and you just need to be reassured that they're working with and for you. And again, I'm sure I'm not telling you something you didn't already know, but with all the noise around the pressure of finding work, it's just so easy to forget what's important and fire off loads of CVs in the hope that yours will get picked up. And quite often it won't, I'm afraid. Now, from where I'm sitting, I get hundreds of CVs weekly, either in response to an advert that I'm running for a role or through recommendation or maybe a speculative approach. And the people I kind of decide to engage with aren't always those who I know I will be able to place. So what I tend to do is choose, if you like, or select people whose approach is warm and friendly, either by email or by phone, people that are comfortable taking advice on how they can better present their CV, for example, or maybe people who are much more open to signposting and general support. I guess what I'm saying is that I speak to many, many more candidates than I have jobs for, but my approach personally is just to ensure that everyone who I've met has had a really positive experience, whether or not I go on to place them in a job. And I would really hope that that would be one of the myths that I've just dispelled. But the point is also, once the conversation has been opened and established and we're all talking, I would absolutely have your back. Not because ultimately I might or just might get paid for placing you, but because I really believe what goes around comes around. So I would say the key takeaway here is to find agencies you feel comfortable with and that's really going to represent you and help you be the best version of yourself, because after all, that should be in their interest. Another point here to note is that I really, really would recommend you keep a note of who's got your CV, where it's gone, what feedback, if any, you've had, as well as the name of the consultant. Get a spreadsheet together, because if you are firing off loads of CVs at the moment and you get a call suddenly from someone, you want to know, who they are or what job it is that you've applied for. I mean, I'm often amazed by how many people, I can call up a candidate, I've had their CV, they've responded to a job ad, so I say who I am, where I'm calling from, and the job they've applied to, and yet they'll still say, oh, I sent so many applications off yesterday, I really can't remember that job. Can you remind me what it's about? And what I'm saying here is, if you want your CV to land on the yes pile, you better know what it's a yes to. I think a question just came up there, Yael, about signposting.
Exactly. There is a question. I was just waiting for you to finish. The question is, what is signposting?
So signposting, in my explanation of signposting, the way I see it, is that someone may phone me and maybe we've got a job to discuss, but it's not right for them. But I may be able to signpost them. So create other paths for them, or say to them, well, if you talk to this person, or I could connect them with someone else. So signposting to me is a generic term. We're just offering support and advice and other paths that they could follow, or people that they could talk to, or have they thought about this, or have they thought about that. So it's a general supportive way of helping. Does that answer the question?
I think that's answered. If there's any follow-up, we'll just put it on the chat. Okay. Yes. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I know, sorry, technical term, signposting.
It's just another way, I guess, of expanding your network and looking at other ways that you can, in this context, develop your job search, because you want to keep all your options open, really. Okay.
Next slide. Sorry, did someone say no? Okay, next slide, please, Yael.
Yeah. So I'm just going to stop and restart. Okay.
So I thought this was a good opportunity to talk a little bit about your CV and the proverbial black hole that you assume it's fallen into. Well, in many cases, you're not wrong. If you're applying to a job through an agency, it's likely that it may not get read. And that's really because of the volume of CVs that have been received for a particular role. And even if it has been read, you may not have had an acknowledgement. If I had £1 for every time a candidate said to me they'd applied for a job but they hadn't heard back, I'd really be in the Bahamas right now and not here in rainy Bournemouth. But why does this happen? I mean, there are lots of reasons, but there's a few that I think are really worth pointing out to you. First of all, you mustn't assume your CV is being read by a human, because many of the larger agencies use AI or automatic screening tools. So if the job says we need a lemon and you've put an orange on your CV, you've lost your chance, I'm afraid. If your skills aren't a match, honestly, you won't be considered. And that's why I always encourage a candidate to really, really closely look at the job description. Does it really match what you can do, what you say you can do? So another thing is, if they're asking for 5 years experience, for example, and you've only got 3, a consultant won't pick up the telephone. And the other thing, sadly, if you've got unexplained gaps in your CV, they won't call you to ask you why, because there are too many other candidates who maybe don't have those gaps. Interestingly, you probably know that if you apply for a job on LinkedIn, you can see how many other people have applied for the same role. And my advice really is, don't be put off by this. I mean, if you genuinely feel the role has your name on it and you genuinely meet all of the criteria, then you should apply. And a quick aside here, because I know Adam Katz is covering this later, but whilst we're on the subject of my very own Bible, that is LinkedIn, here's a hint. If a recruiter has posted something about a job on LinkedIn, send them a direct message. Don't just like the post, which is what I think, is it David said in the beginning when he was saying about sharing a LinkedIn post, because liking something is meaningless. So send a recruiter a message or invite them to connect. And when you invite them to connect, please, please, please send a message saying why you are inviting them to connect. It's a big LinkedIn protocol thing. I've just placed a finance director because he saw a random post of mine that was shared on LinkedIn and he contacted me direct, and he literally started the job on Monday. So that's the value of LinkedIn in that instance. Anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked. Where was I? Right. I think the basic fact is that more people are applying for less roles, and most recruiters simply don't have the time to scan your CV for anything more than maybe 30 seconds before they press delete. You know, there are big no-nos in CVs. So for example, me, because I am the spelling police, poor spelling and grammar is an absolute no-no. You know, attention to detail is absolutely essential. And because we have spell check these days, there's absolutely no excuse for poor spelling and grammar. Pictures, don't need a picture of you, don't need brand logos, don't need any jargon. And anything beyond 3 pages, I might look at it if you're right for it, but I wouldn't be very happy about it. And that can often be the reason why people don't even bother giving a CV a second glance. And my personal bugbear, just worth sharing with you, but again, important, is that a CV that arrives in a PDF format. And this is a really simple reason why. When I package you up nicely to send you to my client, I need to template your CV with my own logo. Because remember, I could be competing with other agencies and I really want to be representing you. They need to know that. And the client needs to know it's from me. But if it's a PDF version of your CV, I can't reformat it. I don't make any changes, nothing fundamental anyway, because we'll have discussed what your CV should look like. I just need a Word or unformatted Word version that's easy to cut and paste. And just one other piece. Sorry, go on, Yael. Were you going to say something?
No, do you want to say your last point? Then there's a few questions.
Okay. Another piece of advice on sending your CV to an agency: follow up. We don't mind. It just shows us you really want the job, that you're really keen, and it really will set you apart from other candidates.
Okay, so a few questions, as I would have anticipated, on CV.
I shouldn't have opened that can of worms.
No, just to say beforehand, also I'll ask you the questions. There is a longer session coming up on CV with my colleague Richard after this one, if anyone wants to join as well. But from your sort of perspective as a recruiter, so Jeremy's asked, what happens when your CV gets sent by more than one agency? Assume you mean, Jeremy, to an employer for a job. Which he's seen happen, probably because one of the agencies sent it without telling you, and maybe the other one did.
Funny enough, I think I point that out later on in this. It's difficult. It's really difficult. And that's why I think it's really important, comes back to the point of knowing who you sent your CV to, you know, and that's, again, the point that I made about different consultants within the same organisation sending a CV off. So, sorry, yeah, what's the actual question? Because I'm not sure I just answered it.
I think the question is the sort of protocol. So an employer gets your CV from 2 different recruitment agencies. How should a candidate handle that?
Well, to be fair, it's not really up to the candidate to handle it. It's up to the recruiter to handle it. And generally, the protocol that I have worked with over the years is that the client will say the first one that arrived is the one, you know, the first of the 2 is the one that they will consider. But yes, it's not really fair for the candidate to have to. And I have had situations where, you know, I might have put a candidate forward and they've also been put forward by another agency in the same way. And the candidate will go, well, I'd actually much rather you represent me than the other one. But if they have, I'm really, really ethical, I think is probably the right word to say there about that. And I will say to the candidate, well, if the other agency has submitted you, then I'm sorry, but you have to work with them. Okay. Does that answer the question? But I suppose what I'm saying is it's not really the candidate, it's up to the agency and the client to work that out.
Definitely makes sense. Hopefully, Jeremy, that answers your question. We have another question from Adele, which is, are some people better suited to applying for jobs via recruitment agencies? She says she loves going via this option. It's an extra network and a link between the employer and the candidate. How would you, I guess, describe applying for jobs via recruitment agencies as opposed to other methods for job searching?
It's a really good question, And I think that she said, does it suit some people more than others? I think it is an additional option, but I think if you are nervous or if you're not sure how to represent yourself, the recruiter can really help you pitch, you know, wrap you up in nice paper and pitch you better maybe than you would be able to do yourself. I think often the recruiter can jump through hoops that you don't have to do when you're applying direct. And I think often the recruiter can open doors, and they may know things about the business that you wouldn't necessarily know if you're applying direct. So I think if you want some hand holding, it's also a very good opportunity to be taken through that whole process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Thank you if that answers the question. Okay, Amanda, do you think you have time for one more question?
Yes.
CV? Okay, great. There are a couple more. What's your opinion on explaining gaps on CVs? So we've got a question from Fernando who says, can you simply say you had family issues, or is it important to explain what the issue was? So I guess it's, obviously you should account for the gaps. How far should you go in accounting for the gaps? What would you say? Okay,
and I'm going to answer this, but before I do that, I should preface what I'm saying. And actually I should have prefaced this right at the beginning, which is that, my advice and my advice comes from my experience and how I work with people and how they work with me. So what I'm saying isn't necessarily what someone else would say. And it's the same with the CV. I always say you can show it to 10 people and you'll get 10 different opinions. But my response to Fernando's question is this: if you have a gap, you should explain it. But I don't think you need to explain it in any more detail other than looking after a sick member of a family or a family, personal situation. I don't think you have to. But you have to, I suspect, be ready to maybe explain that in an interview in more detail. But I don't think on a CV it's like, for example, women that go on maternity leave, you would happily put that you've taken maternity leave or a career break to raise a family.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, if I just could add like one sentence to that. As based on what you said, endorsing what you said to explain in the interview, obviously the CV is to get you to the interview, not to get you the job. So
Correct.
you do everything you can to get yourself to the interview. So sort of accounting for gaps, but without going into too much detail that's going to potentially be a red flag to an employer. Agree with that. Okay.
Agree.
There is one more. Right, there's a question about match, and obviously you mentioned before about people should obviously try their best to match their skills and experience to the job. The question from Nicolette is, if your skills don't match completely, how can you manage to change career? Should you be applying for these type of roles? I think the question is, how will upskilling or using your transferable skills be sufficient if other people have the actual experience that's required?
It's a good question, and it's one that I would bat away to the person that's going to be covering the session later about using your transferable skills. This is where working with a recruiter comes into its own, because this is where it's worth picking up the telephone and having a conversation, assuming there's a recruiter working with this in this particular instance, and finding a way that you can match what you've done. And maybe it's about reassessing your CV, maybe it's about reframing your CV. If it's the job is advertised direct through the company, work hard to get in front or to speak to the person that is the hiring manager, whether it's an HR manager or whether it's a different hiring manager. But if you really feel that that job has, it's like I was saying before, has your name on it totally, and that's the right job for you, then you've got to do everything you can to get your details in front of the employer.
Okay, yes, thank you. I think people can only do what they can do to match as closely as you can.
Correct.
Obviously, as you say, if there is some sort of network that you have on introduction, that really helps in this capacity as well. Okay, great. Thank you. I think there's questions for now. One more.
I've just seen that.
From Gary.
Yes. What I want to know is, how do you stand out to a recruiter, or is that with a recruiting company or directly to a business? Because I can answer with both. Oh, okay. I can answer with my recruiter hat on, and in fact this is something that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about at the moment, because I'm getting so many more applications for a job. And what is really interesting is how people's approach has changed. So where it used to be reply to an ad and hope that she'll phone me, now it's, okay, I've responded to that ad, I'm going to pick up the telephone and I'm going to send an email. And to become a standout candidate, it's not about, you know, making your CV look gorgeous and sexy and putting pictures and colours on it. It's about having a sensible grown-up conversation with the recruiter and explaining why you think the job is for you. I've had so many emails to back up ad responses recently. It's quite shocking how things have changed. Obviously, the market is the way it is. And, you know, people for me who stand out for me are the ones that say, I hope you've seen my CV. These are the reasons why I think I'm great for the job. And they just take the time and the effort to really sell themselves further, not in an aggressive way, but just in a, this is why you really need to be considering me for this job. And funnily enough, yesterday I put a candidate forward for a job precisely because he was tenacious and he was a really good match. Does that answer Gary's question? As far as a business is concerned, I can't really tell you because I haven't worked on that side of the fence.
I would think it's probably a similar-ish principle in terms of matching. Okay, great. Thank you, Amanda. Right. I think that's questions for now.
I've just seen Gilly Black's.
New questions just come in.
Okay, should we move on and leave those to the end?
Yeah, sure, we can. We'll try and answer those questions at the end. We'll come back to them. Okay. So we're going to move to the next slide.
Right, thanks, Yael. So I call this section the honeymoon period, and I'll tell you why. I've got a job. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's an HR manager for a law firm. And your CV lands on my desk in Word, obviously, as we've discussed. And you have a really good HR qualification, and you've also worked for a couple of Magic Circle law firms. You're available immediately, and having been made redundant from your last role, and you speak French fluently, which just happens to be one of the key criteria on the job description. Your CV has been sent along with a short but sweet covering email telling me why you're ideal for the role you've seen advertised. And I'm working my way through all the other applications for this role, and my phone rings, and it's you, my perfect HR candidate. We have a brief chat, and we ascertain that you really are as perfect on the phone as you appear on paper. And we arrange a video call for a couple of days' time to talk through your career history, and more importantly, to ascertain your culture fit for the company. And you reassure me you've got a couple of other early stage interviews in your pipeline, and you go away and you read up on the client and you do your homework. And I put the phone down fairly confident you're the one. I call my client and I update them on my search, and I strongly hint I have someone highly suitable that I will be putting forward after a video interview. And we reconnect later in the week. We have a good old chinwag via Zoom. Oh, excuse me. And I send your CV and a brief sales pitch to the client. The client responds within a couple of days, if not sooner, to arrange the interview with you, because remember, you're the one. And the reason I call this the honeymoon period is that in my experience, when a candidate is in with a chance of a role and has been selected for interview, they behave impeccably. Now, it may not sound like it, but a great deal of work goes into this process. And when the pieces of the jigsaw fit together, it's obviously very rewarding. But remember, without a candidate, I can't fill a job. And if I can't fill a job, I don't get paid, which is why the relationship between the candidate and the recruiter should, in my opinion, be warm and engaging, but also respectful and above all, honest. And a final note here on feedback. If I have feedback, I will let you know. And if you don't hear from me, it's not because I'm avoiding you. It's not because it's basically because I don't have any news. It's not because I've forgotten you. It's because I really don't have any news. Honestly, go guys, honor. Next slide, please.
The right one?
Oh, we're there.
Yes.
So it kind of segues neatly onto this whole point of ghosting, which I know Emma and I discussed before we put together. I was thinking about putting together this presentation. If for whatever reason you decide not to go to an interview or that the job isn't for you, just tell me. I'm a big girl and I won't be offended, but please, please don't ghost me. There is so much on social media about agencies ghosting candidates, but believe me, it happens just as much the other way around. You know, you might have had a change of heart, or maybe you've been offered something bigger and better, or perhaps you're so nervous you can't face the prospect of an interview. But just tell me. You know, I've lost count of the number of times I've spoken to a candidate who's really interested in a role. So I've shared the job description and I say to them, come back to me, let me know your thoughts either way. If it's not for you, that's fine, but just let me know. And, you know, we spent time, we've had a conversation, and people just don't respond and call me old fashioned. I just think that's a little bit rude. I mean, any reason is okay. I really don't mind. Just don't disappear into thin air and just be honest. I mean, one candidate actually did do this to me. And then a year later saw that I'd advertised a role she was interested in. She asked me if I would consider her. And the answer was absolutely not. And it's the same with an interview. Why would you not tell a recruiter how it goes? You know, we put a lot of work into getting you there. And I think it's a two-way process. The relationship has to work both ways. That's really important. So again, after an interview, just phone the consultant and let them know how it goes.
Sorry, Amanda, someone's asked on the chat, what is ghosting? But I think you've just described it. So hopefully that answers the question, Jackie. I think
my understanding of ghosting is that it's come about, funnily enough, as a result of online dating. But I don't know, younger people will probably know more than I do about that. But it's basically, I suppose, when you just disappear and don't come back, just disappear. Other horror stories. Well, there was coming back to the point that we were talking about earlier, the time the same candidate was submitted for the same role by 2 different agencies, which is my way of saying, please ensure you know who's putting your CV where. Or a candidate who turned up 25 minutes late to an interview and just didn't think it was necessary to call the agency, let them know they were running late. I mean, really? I guess what I'm saying is, in summing up, is that we're on your side. Our job is, like you said, Yael, is to get you the interview, but yours is to get yourself the job. But without the meaningful communication on both sides, it can be really challenging. And what about the client in all of this? Let's say you've been unsuccessful after an interview and the client will call with the feedback. And obviously our job is to let you know the bad news. And I would say don't shoot the messenger, but we're with you through the good and the bad. And more often than not, they might just give a really flaky reason. I don't think they'd work well in the team, or she came across as really flat. How do we share this with you? And I think the important thing I've learned is just to say it. No sugarcoating, I'm afraid. It's just, I understand totally how disappointing it can be, and I really understand how much effort and energy goes into preparing for an interview, and how disappointing it is to learn that you've been unsuccessful. But honestly, so much of the time, it's not you, it's them. I mean, clients say they want a lemon, right? So you present them with the most perfect dish of Sicilian lemons. And guess what? They decide, oh no, we wanted a Spanish juicy orange instead. It's crazy. And on that note, there you have it, the good and the bad and the ugly of working with recruiters. One final thing, just a little plug from me. If I've got time, I'm just looking at the clock. If any of you are interested in a more intensive course about finding a job in this current market, then please email me, because I'm running a course, a 2-part course over Zoom, Tuesday of next week and the week after. And we are covering loads of topics in really sort of deep dive way. Reframing your CV, how to pitch yourself, interview skills, your personal brand, basically everything you need to know to maximize your chances. And it will be a small group, really interactive, and hugely supportive. And I'd just love to see some of you there if you feel that it would be useful to you.
Thank you, Amanda. There's a couple of questions. We'll go back. If anybody else has one, they can add now. I see a few coming up. Okay, just on the point of, because a few people have raised this now about their CV being sent by 2 agencies for an employer, and Gary said he's lost out because the actual employer didn't want to get involved in a spat. So I guess a question is, how far would you go to try and advocate for your client being the job seeker in a case like that?
It has happened, and I've had that experience with candidates, and all I can say is that where I've got a really good relationship with my client, then I will often phone up and explain the situation. And if they feel sort of duty bound to go with the other agency, then so be it. But I have been able to turn it around a couple of times. It's hard. It's really hard, especially if you feel, you know, that was a really good job for you. And you just got to, you've just got to hope that the agency is going to represent you properly and put you forward and fight your corner.
Yeah, I guess that's why it's so important to try, as you said, to get the personal relationship.
Yes.
From the start. Okay. Julie's question: jobs advertised on LinkedIn, but you can't get to the recruiter or contact them directly. What would you recommend in that case?
Well, I know it's not everyone's idea of fun, but I would actually sort of maneuver my way through to the hiring manager of that particular job. But it depends why you feel you need to, what the contact needs to be about. Can we find that out?
Yeah. Julie,
or is it a job that's being advertised on LinkedIn? No, it wouldn't be. Not by
I think the question is about a job being advertised on LinkedIn, and you're trying to speak to an actual person about the job, but there doesn't seem to be anyone there. I don't know, Julie, if you want to.
I think she just put something else in the chat. I just saw.
It was the hiring manager. 300 plus applicants. Yeah. Right.
The thing is, the reason they use LinkedIn and not an agency is precisely for that reason, because they don't want to have the direct contact. Yes, that's what she's saying. I couldn't get through to her, and that is part of the problem. And I hear this a lot, you know, with candidates who say, well, you know, it was advertised on LinkedIn, and I have to tell you, and I'm really sorry to dispel myths here, but LinkedIn is also a big blooming black hole sometimes for job applications, and that's why, you know, somehow you've got to sort of be a little bit tenacious, I suppose, a bit like a Rottweiler, and try and find, if not the hiring manager, there's someone else, or can create a contact. Create some, you know, a communication path through. It's not easy. It's not easy with LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, agree from what we've seen in our experience as well. Obviously, you explained, Amanda, you work very closely with your clients and get to know them. But I've been asked if you could give any tips for people who are working with larger agencies, the best way to try and, I guess, maximize your opportunities of finding a job through them.
I'm going to say this, which might be a little bit, well, it's not inappropriate so much, but I'm guessing the audience here is of an age where, you know, it's about having a grown-up conversation. And I think if you're dealing with a child, which sadly often you are in these larger agencies, find the manager or find the most senior person and just have a conversation and say you don't feel you're being represented, or how can you be better represented. But I guess also the final message in all of this is not to work with a larger agency. And I know often you think they have access to the best jobs, but they don't, because sometimes the smaller agencies like me, we have access to much better jobs, and we work exclusively with our clients. So I know I'm not allowed to say this, but I would want to say avoid them unless you really have to, or find someone in there that you feel that you like and that you trust and that has your back. But unfortunately, as I say, I think because they are on the prize, it's just always what's on the whiteboard and the job that they fill. They don't necessarily have the time for you.
Yes, I think probably would agree on what you're saying. Like proceed with caution sometimes with these larger agencies. Also, if they have the jobs that you want, then you want to speak to them. They're sort of like a can't live with them or without them type of situation. But yeah, you just have to try and get that personal connection, as you're saying.
Or just accept that you're not going to have a personal level of service. You know, that's not what you're buying. What you're buying is CV farming, is them getting your CV in front of their client without a level of service, and just accept that that's the way it is.
Great, Amanda, thank you so much. Just as a last question about the training course that you offered, which sounds it will definitely be beneficial to people. If people want to join in, how would they do that after today?
If anyone wants the details, and it is something I'm running independently, it's not, I should say, it's not to do with Work Avenue. I'm very happy if you email me, amanda@bijourecruitment.com, and I will send you the link to Eventbrite.
Okay, everyone's got that? It's Amanda at Bijou Recruitment, BIJOU, correct? Okay,
Yes.
great. Fine, I'll just stop the share now. What I can say is, does anyone have any last questions they would like to ask? We've got a couple of minutes left. No? Okay, well, thank you so much, Amanda, for your talk this morning. I think definitely very helpful for people to hear, I guess, from the inside as to, you know, what they hopefully can do to try and improve their chances. I guess comes down sort of building the relationships with the recruiter where you can, trying to match yourself as best as you can with the job, and, you know, not being worried to have conversations, to follow up with people, just try and build your networks, because everybody has good, strong skills and experience that they can offer to the right job.
Thank you.
I would also like to add my personal thanks to you, Amanda. I thought that was absolutely superb, really informative, really helpful, dispelling, you know, some of the, I don't know, the preconceptions we may have, and also perhaps some of the biases and the prejudices that we also may have about using recruitment agencies. One takeaway that I had from it is, you know, sometimes we have to be a little bit brave, and we have to be, we have to put ourselves out there and reach out in a way that perhaps we don't feel hugely comfortable to do, first of all. We also have to be grown up and brave sometimes to hear messages that aren't always the messages we would want to hear. Obviously, we're going to take them personally, because any message about me, I'm going to take personally, because guess what? It's about me. But we also have to contextualize that message to the situation and the job other people are doing. And once we've heard the message and taken it personally and felt a little bit ruffled by it, we dust ourselves down a bit. We have another cup of coffee. We take a couple of digestives. And then we start all over again and remind ourselves that we can do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to keep on moving forward, because the solution is out there. And these people are actually, you know, you recruitment agents are here to help us, because it's, in the nicest possible way, your business depends upon us.
Correct.
So it was really, really helpful. I took a lot from it, and I'm so grateful. And also want to thank you so much for giving up your morning, or
Pleasure.
part of your morning, to us this morning as well. It's 4 minutes to 11, according to my laptop here. So we will take a break before the next session. Those of you who have your schedule in front of you know that the next 2 sessions are run by my colleague Richard Linden, talking about your second career CV. Or you can join my session, which is rather controversially named "Is Age Just a Number?" And I can say that because I'm old. So either of those 2 sessions, you all have the links for those 2 sessions. As you know, we have the 2-minute silence at 11 o'clock, and that's incorporated in our break. I thank you all for joining this session, and see you on the next one.
Thanks, Emma.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.